I recently got back on Twitter. I know. It's like a drug addiction. But, what the hell? I'm an old man. I've got nothing better to do, right? So I'm on Twitter. And I came across a very, very interesting tweet by a guy. And, well, let me read it to you. I don't know exactly how I came across this series of tweets by this guy called David Rothschild. He says that he's an economist. It suddenly popped into my feed for whatever reason. And he said the following. He said, "Do you consider progressive New Yorkers, quote, real Americans?" End quote. And the next tweet he says, "Problem here is that I consider you, a conservative from the mountain states, a real American. But you do not consider me, a New Yorker, population 8.5 million, a real American. That is your identity politics that is ruining this country." Now, of course, I went and responded to this tweet because I had to, because that's the nature of Twitter. You gotta answer, you gotta respond, you gotta give them your best hot take. And here goes my best hot take. "You are not considered a, quote, real American, end quote, not because you're Jewish or a Democrat or a New Yorker, but because you and the people who share your politics refuse to accept the results of an election. Real Americans accept democratic results even when they don't like them." Yeah, this Rothschild guy, I went to an Ivy League school, right? I lived in New York. In the laps of luxury and the whole publishing industry, I know guys like this. I grew up with guys like this, and he's a smart fella, I'm sure. He's a smart guy, but he's arrogant. And the problem that we've been having over the last 3 years is that people like him, who are a sizable segment of the online community, refuse to be real Americans, as I defined it. That is, they refuse to lose an election. They refuse to accept what the majority wanted. Am I happy with Donald Trump? No, I think he's an idiot. But that's not the point. You see, I wanted Donald Trump because I didn't want Hillary Clinton. That was the real issue, okay, as far as I'm concerned. I thought that she was a warmonger and corrupt. Well, she is a warmonger, and she is corrupt, and she's crazy. She's an evil woman. She's a woman with a black heart. Trump is just a buffoon, but the point. See, you cannot have a functioning democracy without the acceptance by the losers of the results of the election. And that's the problem that we are having with the educated elites, the coastal elites, the guys like this Rothschild fella. He and his friends refuse to accept the judgment of the electorate. And for the past 3 years, they've been trying their darndest to undermine this result with craziness, things that are factually not true, all kinds of smears and allegations of people being Nazis and fascists and authoritarians. Donald Trump isn't authoritarian. I know authoritarianism because I lived in Chile with an actual fascist dictator, Augusto Pinochet Ugarte, for crying out loud. I lived under the Pinochet dictatorship for, 9 years. I know wherever I speak, I've seen a real fascist dictator. Donald Trump, he ain't it. But these guys like Rothschild, right? They refuse to accept what the majority of people in the United States decided. There was an election, and the majority went one way. And he and his colleagues, confreres, call them what you will, went the other way. And they refuse to accept this election, so therefore what they are really showing is a monstrous arrogance, a lack of humility. They believe that they own the truth. This Rothschild fella, he believes that he owns the truth, that he is right. He cannot conceive that he is wrong. Or more to the point, he cannot conceive that a majority of the people think differently and therefore took the country in a different direction from the one that he wanted, or people like him wanted. The fact of the matter is, I know a lot of people like this Rothschild fella, and none of them are my friends anymore, because, you see, I disagree with them politically. I was against Hillary Clinton, not in favor of Trump, against Hillary. But because of this, because my vote necessarily meant Trump, right? They think that I'm a fascist. They don't talk to me anymore. None of the people that I used to know in New York, and I lived there for a long time, none of them want to talk to me anymore. because I'm evil. I'm a reactionary sociopath as far as they're concerned, just because I have a different opinion. That is not what a real American should do. That's frankly what an authoritarian does. An authoritarian refuses to accept a valid democratic election and decides that by hook or by crook, he's going to change the outcome of that election. He's going to refuse to accept it. And he's going to disqualify everybody who was against his side. And he's going to view them as an enemy to be defeated. And he will look at people on his side of the vote, no matter how odious and awful they might happen to be, like Antifa, and he will say, oh, well, you know, they're on the right side, and so it's okay. And they're going to explain away immorality. They will explain away violence. They will explain away efforts to undermine civil society. And that's the key issue, because you see, in a democracy most especially, civil society is extraordinarily fragile. Because after all, democracy depends on the consent of the governed. And if there is a sizable percentage of the governed who refuses to consent and who actively try to undermine the democratic result, then you have a quickly disintegrating civil society. Which is what we have now. We have a disintegrating civil society. And a lot of fairly smart people are saying that we are inching our way to a civil war. And we certainly are. And it's people like this Rothschilds fellow who are egging on this dance of death, quite frankly. Because, yeah, the democracy in the United States will end if a civil war breaks out. And it will, the civil war will break out because people like Rothschild refuse to accept the democratic result. That's why I don't consider people like Rothschild and people like him, New York people, LA people, I don't consider them real Americans. Because in their desire to impose their truth, or not even their truth, in their desire to impose their will, they're willing to sacrifice the truth, they're willing to sacrifice every principle that supposedly makes up the United States. They are happy to undermine the basic democratic process of the United States in order to achieve the result that they want. The result that they want is to get rid of Trump, by hook or by crook. Do I like Trump? No, I do not like him at all. I think that he has not done what he has promised, and the only thing that of any note that he has achieved has been a tremendous tax break for rich people and rich corporations, which I think is obscene, quite frankly. I mean, if anybody looks at the economic situation and the balance of payments of the United States, it is obscene, that tax break. But you see my point. I mean, I don't like the son of a... But, well, you know, he's the guy we got. He's the guy that wound up winning the election, like it or not. And that's the point. These guys, people like Rothschild, the New York and Washington elites, the Select Corridor, right? And the people in LA and San Francisco and the I-5 corridor, you know, they are unwilling to accept what the majority voted for. They are willing to do that, and that makes them un-American. That's why they are not real Americans. They will only become real Americans when they stand up and say, I hate this guy, but he's what we got. And so let's try to work forward and achieve goals that all of us want. Because I'm sure that this guy Rothschild, like me, wants an end to these foreign adventures. I'm sure this guy Rothschild wants an end to this ridiculous healthcare system in the United States, which bankrupts people and sends them potentially to jail, to debt prison, for crying out loud, right? I'm sure this fellow Rothschild wants the end of the deep state and the entrenched bureaucrats dictating policy, and wants the policy decisions to go back to the elected officials and not to these career entrenched bureaucrats that actively try to commit, frankly, treason. Let's call it what it is, right? I mean, I'm sure this fellow wants a lot of things that I want. I'm sure this guy Rothschild wants a lot of things that how do you call it, the voter from the mountain states wants. I'm sure he wants the same things. But see, the way he is behaving, the belief that there is no common ground, and more to the point that a democratic election, is only a good election if it's his way. And if it's not his way, it's the highway. Or, more correctly, if it's not his way, it has to be undermined and kicked in the shins so that it doesn't succeed. Well, that's un-American. You, Rothschild, or people like you who are watching this, you have to accept the election. You have to accept the results. People on the opposite side of the political divide accepted the election in previous elections. They might not have liked the guy who wound up being president. I certainly didn't like Obama. I thought he was just an empty suit, all hat, no cattle. But that's for a different video, a different conversation. The point is, see, I accepted him in the 2008 election and the 2012 election. I didn't like it, but let's see if we can work something out with the guy, right? But the way you are behaving, you, the elite, educated people on the coasts, you are acting in ways that are un-American, and the rest of the country is coming to hate you. And this doesn't augur well for you or for anyone. Think it over.